ready?
Yeah.
Wait.
Okay.
Yes.
So we are going to do the center zipper today. There are lots of different types of zippers that can be used. For this class, this period today, I have put a short zipper, a 7-inch zipper, and your zipper foot in your pocket. So you should find, everyone should find that available to you. Maury, I've got to find one more zipper foot. You don't have a foot, but somebody will be done when you're ready for it. Okay, so we are going to use just a regular zipper. The bottom stop here is made of metal, and right up where the top stop is made of metal. The teeth are actually a polyester or a plastic. So if your needle hits that, if you're going slow, it should just work its way in between the teeth of the zipper and shouldn't be a problem. But if you hit the metal portions, what will it do to your needle?
Break it.
Break it. Okay? So that's one little key we need to know about. The directions say that you are to cut 2 pieces of fabric, 4 inches by 12 inches. Mine are just a little bigger than that. You have a measuring guide right here on your machine that you can use if you want. Mine are almost 7 by 13, but not a big deal. It's a little bigger. You don't want them any smaller than what our directions say. So the directions say to pin 2 long edges of the fabric pieces with right sides together. Grab me your pins, Maury. I forgot mine. In preparation for sewing a 5/8 inch seam allowance. So I am going to sew these 2 pieces, or pin these 2 pieces together by matching up the edges all along this side. Then the next step says that I am going to lay the zipper on the fabric with the teeth, top teeth of the zipper at about 1 inch below the top of the fabric. So if I just lay it in front of my machine, I can see the 1 inch mark. I want to lay it so that the teeth start at about the 1 inch mark. And it says then to mark the location of the bottom stop of the zipper. So you'll need a marking tool with you, and I'm just going to find where this bottom stop, the metal piece is, and I'm going to mark my fabric right there. So I've marked that spot. The next step says starting from the bottom of the fabric, so a 5/8 inch seam up to the mark that you've made. So I'm going to lay my zipper aside. I don't need it right now. And I just noticed that if I put this in here with the bulk of my fabric on the left-hand side, that I'm going to be starting at the top because this is the bottom of the fabric. So I'm going to just switch my pins to the other side very quickly. And I'm going to mark that spot on this side, same spot, so that if I start at the bottom of the fabric, I am actually starting so that the bulk of my fabric is on the left, and I can use the 15 or the 5/8 inch guide here to guide my sewing. So I'm going to put this in here, and it says stitching from the bottom, so on 5/8 inch seam, back stitch, change the stitch length to the basting stitch and stitch forward again at the top. I think I missed a word there, but I'm going to back stitch here because I'm holding this together. Then I'm going to sew forward, and I'm going to sew up till I get to the mark I made. Not pushing or pulling my fabric, I'm letting it move all on its own. When I get to the mark, it says to back stitch, just 3 or 4 stitches. I'm going to come back forward. Once I get back up to the mark again, I'm going to change the stitch to a basting stitch, and then I'm going to sew forward again. Where's a basting stitch? 5, at the 5. So then I'm going to sew forward again to the end, and I'm not going to back stitch when I get to the end. Make sure you turn your hand wheel till your take-up lever's up. Pull your threads out. And I'm just going to use that cut there. The next step after that says press the seam open. So I'm going to run to this ironing board and I'll be right back.
Press the red square. There's a red square.
So I've pressed the seam open, just as you guys have done before. Very nice and flat. The next step, then step number 3, says change the presser foot on your machine to a zipper foot. So we've talked about the fact a little bit that there are different zippers, different feet for your machine. This is the zipper foot right here. And I am going to take the regular stitching foot off, and I'm just going to put my hands on the back and pull it towards me. It's like a little alligator mouth there, the white plastic, and there's a little bar on the foot that slid in there. And I'm going to put that in the back cup so I don't lose it. And now the zipper foot has 2 sides to it. I can use either side depending on which side of the seam I want to be sewing on. So I'm going to go ahead and just slide it on one side right now. I may have to change it in a minute. But you see how I had the little alligator mouth? And I just slid the little bar right into it. Okay? So change the presser foot to the zipper foot. Place the zipper face down on the open seam allowance, wrong side of fabric. And I want to make sure I know where my line was. This is the bottom part, so I don't want the zipper down at that end. I want the zipper from here to here. And it says to place it face down. So the zipper pull needs to go down right over the teeth and position the bottom at the stop where my mark was. So I position the stop right there. And it says to pin or align the zipper teeth along the basted seam and pin to the seam allowance. So I know personally as I get on here, it's going to tell me the next thing I do is start at the bottom and sew. So if I'm going to start at the bottom and sew, I want my pins going towards the bottom. So I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to place this right over so that my teeth are over the seam, and I'm going to put pins in just the seam allowance. I'm not pinning it clear through. Okay. And I'm going to pin one side of this zipper. If I did a good job on my seam, I can tell that I'm in the center because I would have the same amount of fabric on both sides of the zipper there. Would be centered. I'm even going to put a pin in this very top part. So the next step says to open the zipper machine baste. So I'm still on basting on the 5. Machine baste that to the seam allowance. Okay. What I want to do, though, I'm going to open the zipper, but I'm not going to go all the way yet. I'm going to start it about there. One of the things that you need to know is that you cannot sew with your zipper foot up and around this because it's going to sew out and around. Okay, so you don't want the stitching to go like that. You want it to be nice and straight. So you'll have to maneuver your zipper pull as you're sewing. So I'm not going to back stitch because I'm basting. I'm just securing this to the seam allowance, not to the whole garment. And one thing about a zipper foot is that it doesn't run over the top of the zipper. The edge of the zipper should be running right along the teeth of the zipper. Does that make sense? So if you are positioned that the zipper is going under the foot, you know you're doing something wrong. Okay? So I'm just going to sew. And you notice my pins are going towards the positioning of my sewing so that I can pull them out easy. Once I get up here enough till my zipper pull will go behind there. I make sure my needle's in, lift my presser foot, and I'm going to move the zipper pull down to that end because it said to sew it with the zipper open. So I should be able to see that my teeth are pretty much right over where that seam was. I'm not pushing or pulling my fabric. I'm letting it sew on its own, guiding it so that that zipper foot is right along the teeth of the zipper here. I don't backstitch at the end. Turn your hand wheel till your take-up lever's up. I'm going to cut that off. I'm going to go ahead and cut this down here just so I don't have all these extra strings hanging around getting in my way. Then it says to close the zipper and machine baste the other side. So at this point, I need to make sure that my zipper tab or pull is up, or it's going to get caught in there and you're going to have a lot of problems. So again, I want to sew from the bottom up. So I'm going to put some pins in here just to secure it and hold it into place while I'm sewing. Make sure it's laying nice and flat. Oop, that turned down on me there. Make sure that zipper pull is up because you're going to have to maneuver it here as you work. Okay. This time, if I put it in on this side, you can see that if I try to sew on here, I'm going to be running right over the zipper. So I just make sure my needle's up further, take that off, and slide it back on the other side. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to run the zipper edge of the zipper foot right down the side of the zipper, basting. So I don't need to backstitch. And again, I'm only sewing it to the seam allowance. I'm not sewing it to the garment. Come on, machine. Okay, when I get close to the teeth, I want to, or the zipper pull, I want to make sure my needle's in, put my presser foot up, work that past the foot, and then finish sewing up through here. Clear to the end. Threads. I'll go ahead and cut this off down here so that I don't have a bunch of threads hanging around. Okay, so I've got it basted on. You can see I don't have any sewing on the front of my zipper yet. It's just basted to the two sides. I'm going to go ahead and put my zipper up again. Now, step number 5 says turn the fabric over and take a needle and thread and hand baste it. If I was working on a wedding dress, a prom dress, something that is very silky or fabric that moves a lot, then I might want to go ahead and hand baste this with a bright color that doesn't match. But since it's this fabric, you should be able to baste it or just sew now and not worry about that hand basting. So with your cottons, we should be okay. So number 5 I crossed off. 6, change the machine to regular stitching between 3 and 4. Starting at the center of the seam, okay, top stitch just outside the line of basting, which isn't there because I don't have that. Pivot at the corners by leaving the needle in and turning a 90-degree, top stitch up both sides. So I start in, I'm going to put a pin in where that metal piece is. And I want to start right above that pin. I don't want my needle to go in. to that. I'm going to put the pin in, okay, or the needle, I'm sorry, in right in the center. And if it goes into the teeth, it's okay. It'll separate them and be fine. Then I'm going to stitch about 2 or 3 stitches out, pivot, and then I'm going to sew clear up the side. Then I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to go out about 2 or 3 stitches, and I'm going to sew clear up the side. Okay? Hopefully when I'm done, those 2 rows of stitching will be the same distance apart. I want to make sure my needle goes in at the same spot both times. The other thing that you want to do is leave these threads. Don't back stitch down here. I will back stitch a little bit at the top. Okay? So I'm starting down here, and I always take a little practice run. I always sit it in here and say if I go 2 to 3 stitches here and pivot, will the edge of my presser foot be along the edge of my zipper? And it will be at this point. So I'm going to, right above that pin, because that was where my needle was, I'm going to go right in the seam. Now, I'm on that plastic piece, the presser foot is. So my presser foot is doing this bit and may get a little stuck in there. So I might have to give it a little tug. A lot of times I will just, it doesn't want to go anywhere, so come on. Very little movement there. Trying to make my own stitches there. Needle in, pivot. Make sure it's running along the side, not on top of. I think I'm in pretty good shape. So I'm going to sew. I can see right here is the edge of my teeth, and I'm just sewing right up along the edge of my teeth. I can feel that zipper closure, the pull here. Once I get close to it, I might be a little close to that today. I'm going to put my needle in. I'm going to take a finger or a pin or something, and I'm going to work that past the presser foot. So clear on up to the end. Back stitch, just 2 or 3 stitches. Make sure your take-up lever's up. Pull it out. Cut those threads. You see I have a tail here on both sides. I want to leave that tail. Now I want to go in, and I'm going to end up going this way and pivot. And so I can see that I would be on top of my zipper, right? So I want to pop this off, change the side. Make sure I have enough thread. And now if I go this way and pivot, I'll be running along the zipper again. So close my zipper back up. See why you need that tab out there? Put the needle in right where you had the needle in the last time. Again, you may have to maneuver this a little bit, pull, get it to move. Doesn't want to move very good. I want it to be about the same distance away that I was the last time. I'm not quite there. This isn't moving well. So I'm making my own little stitch. It's getting stuck on there. Okay, there we go. Pivot, and I'm going to run up the side again, just like I did, right along the edge of the teeth. If you go out too far, you won't be catching your zipper. Okay, so you can't go out here. You have to stay close to the zipper. When I get up close to where the zipper pull is, again, I have to put my needle in, presser foot up, work my zipper past the presser foot, and I'm going to sew to the end. When I get to the end, I'm going to back stitch a couple stitches. Okay, so now I've sewn on the front. You can see I have 2 rows of stitching. This isn't the best zipper I've ever done. Why? Can you tell? See how this seam over here is further away than this seam? Okay? Probably if I had a white thread that didn't show up a lot, it wouldn't be that noticeable. Obviously with the orange thread, it shows up a lot more, but you really want those to be the same distance. So I would probably take one side out and redo it if I was making a garment. Okay, so the next step says, using a hand sewing needle, pull the thread ends at the zipper bottom, right here, to the other side and tie a knot. So I'm going to lay this down and see if I can get them without a hand sewing needle, because I didn't bring one over here. Sometimes you can get those threads and they are probably not going to come today. Does anybody have their hand sewing needle real quick from their envelope? From their, oh, there's one. Let's see, which one did I get? Still got one to get through there. I'm not sure which one it is. Okay, so to do that, if you can't just get them to pull through, you want to stick your hand sewing needle down in there, and you're in that zipper, so it might be a little difficult, but you can handle it, maybe. Well, and I'm going to thread the needle then. And I'm going to pull that through. Now I have 4 threads down here at the bottom, and I want to tie those 4 threads into a knot 2 to 3 times. To secure the bottom of those stitches. You can see on this side, you can see 2 rows of stitches because one is the basting that just goes through to the seam allowance. The other one is the stitching that went clear through both sides. So the next step, the very last one, says remove the basting stitches. The main basting stitches that I need to remove are the ones that are keeping my zipper closed. So if I move my zipper pull down, I can see right here, I can get those stitches out. Don't pull your fabric, so you don't want to rip your fabric, but once I cut them, they'll pull out a little bit. And I'm going to go clear to the bottom of the zipper. I don't want to cut my stitches that I just tied off. And then I need to get these threads out so they're not hanging around. And now I have a zipper. Okay? Like I said, there's lots of other ways to install zippers. This is just called the center zipper so that it's centered over the zipper. And this is the one we're going to do for a sample. So once you get that done, your sample is done. At that point, you can turn all of your samples into me, pin them to that score sheet I gave you. When I turn them back to you, you need to take your seam ripper and take this zipper out very carefully and turn that zipper into me for 5 points, extra points on top of your scores, okay? So just take it and seam rip all the seams out of it without tearing the zipper up and turn the zipper into me so I can reuse them. Any questions? We're good.
Yay.
You can turn that off.